Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on young consumers' attitudes to finance and shopping. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that a recording will be made available of this webinar on demand should you wish to rewatch it. And also there will be Q&A at the end, so don't forget to submit your questions throughout the webinar via the Zoom Q&A function. My name's Lucy Maguire, I'm Trends Editor at Vogue Business, and I'm thrilled to be joined here today by Heather Fields, Director of Global Pay Later Product Marketing at PayPal. Heather is also a mentor to Maryland's most promising startups, and previously she's held roles as VP of Marketing at OrderUp during its fast growth leading to acquisition by Groupon, VP of Marketing for GiveCorp, which was acquired by Network for Good, and she's also former Director of Marketing at Bill Me Later, one of the earliest buy now pay later solutions, which was acquired by PayPal. I'm also joined here today by Samina Virk, Global CMO of personalized shopping service Thread Styling. Samina is a senior executive with over 20 years of experience in the fashion, e-commerce and digital industry. She's currently Global CMO of Thread Styling, leading an international team across social content, editorial and brand marketing. In her previous roles, Samina has led various marketing and brand growth initiatives for companies like eBay, Target, Gilt Group and ASOS, as well as launching in the US market for Vestiaire Collective. Thank you both for joining. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. And so today's webinar is bolstered by research conducted by Vogue Business and PayPal, which surveyed Vogue and GQ readers in the US. We're going to talk about approaches to personal finance among younger consumers, the buy less, buy better movement that's sweeping this generation, and also purchase factors and how they've been altered by the pandemic. Now, according to Vogue Business and PayPal research, 74% of Gen Zs are worried about accumulating debt, more than any other generation. Heather, what's unique about younger generation's attitudes to personal finance?
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Lucy. Glad to be here with you, Samina. I think what came through this research and other research we've done is that Gen Z are definitely very financially savvy, and I'd say savvy overall. At the time of this session, we're live in several countries with Buy Now, Pay Later, and currently more than 1/3 of our Buy Now, Pay Later users are under 30 years of age. And during our earnings call yesterday, our CEO shared that we saw $1.5 billion in buy now, pay later transactions last quarter alone, which was up 50% from the previous quarter. And I share that to say that we have a really rich audience to understand and share with our merchant partners. And what we see is this generation really does understand money. They use and move money differently. They send it digitally from the palm of their hand to friends to split the rent, to their beauticians for a blowout, to their dog walker. And I know many of you, probably like me, are now just as savvy at sending money because we learned it from this Generation Z or the millennials in our lives. And in addition, our studies are showing that they are debt averse. And that's because they've observed and understand that their parents and grandparents had to experience debt. But to that point, Gen Z does have credit cards. They just like to pay friends differently by moving money, with their mobile device. And they also appreciate buy now, pay later because that gives them an easier, friendlier way to pay online. And primarily that's to avoid interest. So they're very savvy about interest. Lastly, I'd say this research and other research we've done shows that Gen Z customers who use buy now, pay later, they're higher income relative to the general population, but they're also savers. So they're using buy now, pay later. I think the study here, I think we're going to show this, 65% of the buy now, pay later users say that they like it because it helps them manage their budget. I could speak a little bit too also to their savviness when it comes to purchasing in categories. Most notably over the last year, we've seen large upticks in apparel, accessories, and cosmetics, which I think we'll speak to later in this presentation. And then lastly, on their savvy, I would say that we're very interested in the research that we've done with Vogue and our own research that goes beyond demographics. We really want to understand Gen Z for our own good and for the good of our merchant partners. And what we see that I think is really interesting is their values. And we want to understand those because we want to meet their motivations and expectations around payment. I'm sure many of our listeners know that this generation shops based on their values and your brand values. They know what you care about and it really matters to them. And we see that too. But they also value shopping as an adventure. They don't want to get into debt. So there's a lot of spontaneity, but also that personal responsibility around their shopping.
Absolutely. And you touched on buy now, pay later there. And the study showed that 1/3 of Gen Z and millennials are likely to use buy now, pay later for fashion purchases, which is ahead of the average. Why does buy now, pay later boost fashion purchases amongst this generation?
Great. Yeah. I saw there was a three or four things on the slide that kind of upticked last year. I would say that I've worked in payments for most of my career, much of it in buy now, pay later. You mentioned Bill Me Later, which goes back to 2003. And so two things I sort of believe and have learned over time is that money needs to work for everyone. And financial freedom is like a near universal goal. And I believe buy now, pay later fits really into those two beliefs. And those two beliefs were really amplified last year during the pandemic when customers were driven to shop online. And that's where they discovered buy now, pay later. So it's become much more important than it was just 9 months ago, based on your research, I think because of that. Again, I think I mentioned this, but our research shows that PayPal customers choosing buy now, pay later, they're doing it because they can purchase with no interest. And they love the certainty of monthly installment amounts. It makes their money work for them. It helps them preserve their savings. One of the other reasons that came up in choosing buy now, pay later over the last year is that I can purchase things that I want or need, and I don't need to save up in advance. So they get to take advantage of a limited time opportunity or a moment of discovery or some inspiration, which I think fits perfectly into what Samina is going to be talking about here in just a bit. And I would say lastly, buy now, pay later has grown because we see that it really does strengthen emotional connections between brands and customers. There's very strong loyalty with buy now, pay later. And again, on our earnings call yesterday, our CEO shared our reuse rate for buy now, pay later customers. It's very significant. So within the first 6 months of their first buy now, pay later purchase, 70% go on to purchase again within those 6 months. And we see a really high number that are doing 2 or more purchases using buy now, pay later. So yeah, I think it's definitely resonating.
Wonderful. And you speak there about, Gen Zs and millennials even making their money work for them. And coupled with worry over debt, it feels like there's this real desire for financial literacy amongst Gen Zs, particularly since they've seen their parents struggle amid the pandemic, as you touched on. From influencers on TikTok to the boom of resale, it feels like young people are really keen to invest and become financially independent in non-traditional ways. So this applies to, and I've reported on this before as well, this applies to how they consume clothes, for example, as many start to see fashion as a sort of alternative asset class. Now, more than a quarter of respondents surveyed by Vogue Business spent in excess of $300 on new fashion items each month over the past 6 months. Samina, how are young consumers shopping on Threads post-pandemic, and how are they investing in fashion?
So we actually saw quite a few trends emerge last year that have continued into this year, and also in line with what Heather was talking about. But many of our clients are buying more high quality investment fashion pieces that are really sort of seasonless and meant to stand the test of time. This is everything from luxury handbags to a Rolex watch, or even high value jewelry pieces like Lorraine Schwartz. And on that note, fine jewelry and watches has been a really popular category and where they're investing. So last year, our jewelry sales grew, I think it was over 80%, and that growth is continuing into this year. And this year, we're really seeing watches see triple digit growth. So they're definitely investing more in that area. And I think within fine jewelry and watches, clients are also much more interested in customized bespoke pieces. So whether it's a gift or it's for themselves, there's some special meaning. So that might be customizing the face and the watch of Rolex watches. The face and the colors of Rolex watches, creating their own color and stone combinations with Ananya bracelets are just some examples. So that's been interesting to see. And then another trend that we saw last year and continues into this year is a lot of our clients are using our social content to discover new brands across all categories, but particularly in fine jewelry. So we saw many new jewelry designers become popular. So for example, Camian, Savelina, Ananya, I mentioned before, are some of the brands that we've launched. And those brands are now driving over 30% of the category sales. So it really shows that people still want to discover while they're investing. Now, post-pandemic, what we're seeing is that clients really want to have more fun with their fashion, and they're responding to brighter colors and textures much more than ever before. So for example, like really colorful footwear, like Amina Muadi heels and like neon greens and hot pinks, Chanel slingbacks and bright pink, Mach and Mach heels. So I think that trend is continuing across different categories, including bags, like the Bottega green is the color of the season. We have these bright, bold Prada bags. And so it's exciting to see people investing in fashion, but also wanting to have more fun, especially after such a challenging period.
Yeah, I would just build on that. We've seen that too. Sorry, Lucy, to cut in, but our research shows the same thing, that, these aren't really frivolous purchases. These are very well considered. And in fact, our customers use the term wealth creating. So a lot of thought and care is going into these investments. They describe them as investments or assets. You mentioned apparel, jewelry, watches. We also see sneakers. We see a lot of accumulation of sneakers as an asset class.
Yes, actually, sneakers is a very big category for us too. And our clients love seeing sort of the casual wear styled alongside these luxury and designer brands, which is where I think our content sort of helps tell that story.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, because I feel like previously people might have thought that only monochromatic or very classic colors would be good investments. But actually, I've reported on this recently that the pandemic made people realize that life is short and they want to dress more boldly for the long term. So they're seeing brighter colors and bolder prints as investments and long-term purchases and things they're going to wear again and again.
Yeah.
And Samina, how do you help drive these higher ticket purchases at Threads? Because it is quite an undertaking.
So, I think that our business model is sort of, the shopping experience is built around those sort of higher ticket purchases. For those who don't know Threads, we're a luxury shopping platform that operates entirely over social media and chat. And so our curated content on social is a really important part of the Threads journey. It's not only a source of inspiration for our clients, but it also drives over 50% of our sales. And our personal shoppers have access to all of the social content, and they're also creating customized style edits based on what their clients are looking for. So that's very key. And then from there, from our social channels, clients are dropped directly into a chat with personal shoppers. So their journey is completely personalized, and shoppers really tailor recommendations to exactly what they want, what the client is looking for, whatever's happening in our clients' lives. I think that level of service is key for those higher value sales where clients might have a lot of questions before they want to invest or commit to an investment piece, or they want to know more about the style, the size, the color. Our personal shoppers really support this purchase path and really send as many details and pictures and sort of get them there. And we definitely see an increase in conversations for higher value sales. So I think that combination of direct relationship plus our technology of chat commerce really ensures that we can maintain that sort of high level of connection and really service our clients.
Wonderful. And that actually brings us very nicely to the next slide, which is discussing purchase factors and how they may have changed over the pandemic. So many purchase factors that you might expect, like price, return policy, and free shipping, are unchanged by the pandemic. But there's a few that have actually become more important to consumers. Heather, which purchase factors have become more important between 2020 and 2021, and how can brands harness this?
Yeah, so I think I've spoken quite a bit about buy now, pay later, which I love to talk about, and I'll keep going. But there were two more that came out in our study, which I'll touch on, which were influencers and recommendations from friends. And I think, as Samina mentioned, like today's fashion buyers, they're looking for shopping inspiration. They love to go on a shopping adventure. We're seeing in our own customer base a lot of inspiration in Insta, TikTok, and other social channels, following influencers, following sites like Vogue, YouTube channels. And then services like Threads, which, as Samina mentioned, really becomes sort of that trusted companion that helps scout out those shopping discoveries, makes me and our customers looking for that adventure, but also wanting to know it's a sound investment. And then recommendations from friends. Again, I don't think there's a surprise there that it's increased. I think we all have friends who are really in the know. And these friends are always the ones we go to as a resource for inspiration. Text groups, social communities, we all have friends that we can get recommendations from 24/7. And I think on the recommendation from friends front, it's very digital now. It can be asynchronous. So it makes it very easy to hear from trusted friends and family members around the world. And I can just look at my own life. I have a niece in Nigeria on an awesome internship who sends me unique local artisans via WhatsApp a couple of times a week. So that's been really fun. And the ring I'm wearing is from one of those artisans. And a friend I have that currently works in the UK, she lets me know about local shops, which I can then follow on Insta and purchase from. One of them is called My Sunny Side or Sunny Side Up. Sorry, I've gotten the name wrong. I hope you're not on the call, but I love your fashion. And all of these recommendations sort of working in that asynchronous way 24/7 wouldn't really have even been possible just a few years ago. So to me, it's exciting to see that we have all of these shopping companions growing. and also sort of not a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've touched on peer-to-peer recommendations or recommendations from family and friends, Samina, this is kind of the philosophy that Threads is built on, but can you give us a little bit more detail into how brands and retailers can really lean into this desire for sort of enhanced recommendation and enhanced product information?
Well, even beyond recommendations, the entire shopping journey has evolved and changed quite a bit. I think it's going to continue to evolve. So in addition to recommendations, I think there was another study recently that reported over 70% of Gen Z consumers make their purchase decisions at the point of inspiration. And beyond that, today's consumers, especially luxury consumers, want convenience, they want speed, all while getting the best service. So I think brands have to really balance that entire journey. It'll be really important for brands to continually connect and interact with their consumers, and whether that's online, in store, on text, as we do, to really kind of understand what are they looking for, what do they like, and more importantly, what's happening in their life and what are they shopping for. Brands also really need to understand where consumers are going, where their customers are going for that inspiration. And I think that perspective will really inform what kind of recommendations matter most. Is it peer? Is it influencer? How to blend the two? And also will feel the most authentic, which is very important to the younger generation. Beyond that, I think taking that plus data, and in some cases technology, brands really have the opportunity to personalize their consumers' experience instead of serving everyone the same selection, the same experience, the same sort of shopping journey. Like right now, obviously, social media is a real key driver and inspiration. And with so many platforms, we have our usual suspects like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, but there's so many other platforms that are coming in and out. There's really an opportunity for brands to have that interaction and see their clients in different ways. So for example, at Threads, I mentioned we have a strong focus on curated social content, but last year it was our direct client conversations that shifted our content direction and recommendations almost in real time so that we could adjust as clients were going through different phases of the pandemic. So for example, when clients asked for more at-home wear, we shifted our content to feature loungewear, athleisure. We even had our stylists do the features at home. So you really could relate to the content, and we absolutely saw an increase in sales as a result of that. But some other examples, we launched a dedicated Threads interiors account last year as people were spending more time at home and they were starting to ask for home decor. And we saw an immediate increase in interest in sales in homeware, home decor, art. In fact, over 80% of those sales were from existing clients. So it really showed they wanted to go beyond fashion and now create more of a lifestyle. At another point last year during the pandemic, clients started asking for beauty products. As skincare became more of a priority, which I think is not a surprise to any of us. And they started buying beauty products alongside fashion. So from that, a new beauty category was born. And then, again, we saw some of the same trends continue into this year. And when we saw that our clients wanted more information about different fine jewelry and sort of watches and follow the trends I spoke about earlier, we launched a dedicated jewelry account called Threads Jewels earlier this year to give them more of a platform so that they could really explore. So all of those are examples of ways that we shifted our business in real time based on what clients were asking for. So I think absolutely recommendations, influencers, peers, but how do you blend that into the experience and see it all the way through?
Definitely. I think it's interesting what you say about different platforms, because for me, in my research, it's come out that different platforms can hold very different functions. So where maybe Instagram's more aspirational and you can use a mega influencer, perhaps on TikTok, or if you do a live stream experience, you use a more local expert, or even a shop assistant or a personal shopper who's really in the know about the nitty gritty of the clothing or the garments, the accessories. It's very exactly. Interesting that you can adapt in that way.
And sometimes clients are switching between platforms, but they're also the younger generation. They switch between platforms, and some may not be, one person on TikTok might not be on Instagram anymore as much. So I think there's the balance of keeping all active and making sure you sort of know where your consumers are.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming on to buy now, pay later, because buy now, pay later actually gained influence over consumers based on this data. Heather, how do you expect buy now, pay later adoption to continue growing amongst younger consumers in the coming years? Do you think that this trajectory is going to continue?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this generation is going to keep using buy now, pay later and is going to continue to influence the other generation. So I think that we'll see a lot of growth in those older generations as parents, colleagues, and the people around this early adopting age group start to see each other again and talk about shopping and the use of buy now, pay later. So definitely think that there's a lot of growth there still.
Wonderful, thank you. And that concludes this portion of the webinar. And now I'd just like to quickly summarize our conversation. So first of all, it's become clear that financial security and independence is very important to young people. So they treat credit differently, and they're also buying fashion differently by buying higher ticket items and accessories that feel like an investment for the future. Also, Gen Z and millennials are buying less but buying better, as I touched on. But post-pandemic shoppers are keen to spend more on each purchase and make fewer purchases. And brands and retailers can help facilitate this with payment options and high-end edits. And finally, interactivity is key. Brands can help facilitate high-ticket investment spending with informative and in-depth customer interaction online and in-store. Heather, Smina, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we move to Q&A?
Just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Lucy, and you, Samina, today. If there are any additional questions from anyone in the audience, they can certainly reach out to me too. I covered a lot of data. Happy to talk more about that. And I'm very active on LinkedIn, so folks can find me there.
Wonderful, thank you.
And, I'd say absolutely the pandemic has shifted quite a bit. I think we're going to continue to see the environment evolve as we figure out how to live in this blended world. And I think the most important thing for any brand is just to stay connected to who your customers are. And I think that's the key to help shift and really understand those preferences and changes and move with it.
Thank you. And we have a couple of questions here. So first of all, there's been concern around buy now, pay later and its safety for young shoppers. Is it likely young people will accrue debt with these services? And how do you prevent this, Heather?
Okay, good question. We get that one a lot. As I mentioned earlier, with our research and your research and other industry research, customers are choosing buy now, pay later because they're savvy and they are debt averse. I think I also mentioned that PayPal is trusted. We were recently named the #2 most trusted brand in the world, something I take very seriously, as do my peers. So we strive to develop buy now, pay later products that are always going to be simple and clear for consumers and for our merchant partners. Because at the end of the day, we want to empower consumers to shop with confidence. And so we've got more than 10 years of leadership in buy now, pay later. And over that time, we've developed proprietary models and data that allows us to offer transparent financing options to the customers. We also understand how to communicate very clearly with consumers. So we are in touch with our buy now, pay later customers with payment reminders, payment due dates, very clear about purchases. So for all of those reasons, I feel like we're a role model for buy now, pay later. So hopefully that answers the question for our viewer.
Absolutely. And a second question for you, Heather. Can you offer buy now, pay later on a brick and mortar shop?
Yeah, actually, buy now, pay later is expanding into a lot of different channels. So we're seeing the use of virtual cards to use buy now, pay later through Apple Pay and Google Pay. And I think there's a lot of interesting things that'll happen when it comes to stores reopening and how customers are going to want to use buy now, pay later options in store.
Thank you. And the next one for Samina. So when investing in goods, what are the most popular brands and categories among young people right now?
So, I think one of the things that our clients respond the most to is when we style different products, different brands, different categories together. And that's the content that, we get the most interest on. That's where we get the most inquiries and sales coming through. And so what's interesting is for that younger generation, we do see a pretty nice mix of casual wear with some of those traditional luxury brands. So for example, Nike alongside Prada, alongside Chanel and Louis Vuitton. So we're still seeing the balance of those luxury brands being sold, as well as more contemporary and designer brands. But what's interesting is kind of the combination of the two and how they respond to the styling.
Thank you.
So those are really popular.
And another question for Heather. So when offering services like buy now, pay later, how do you communicate your mission, customer promise internally? What vision do you rally your team behind?
Oh, wow. Okay, great. Well, buy now, pay later is something the entire business is rallying behind because we're live in many global markets. In fact, we just launched in Australia and we also recently launched in France. So it's something that the entire company is very well aware of. And as I said, we take trust seriously and sort of infuse that across all of our products, including buy now, pay later. And really, as a business, strive to always be simple, clear, transparent. As a business, PayPal has strong values that we get behind, not just with buy now, pay later, but with social justice and other issues. So I think that as a business and tens of thousands of employees working there, we really do stand behind our products and want them to be the best of the best out there, world class.
And just one final question, that's all we've got time for. Heather, it's another one for you. Do you think that buy now, pay later will become popular for older generations? And if so, when do you see this happening and on which specific platforms?
Oh, I love that question. So I mentioned 1/3 of our customers are in this demographic under 30 years old. So the younger customer, that means 2/3 are older. There have been some recent studies on that too. In our country, American Banker published that not a couple of months ago, kind of shows you the adoption with these other generations. So that's exciting to see. And I think it's, again, not too much of a surprise. One, they're following the lead of the Gen Z and millennials in their lives who led them down the Venmo path, for example, and have shown them buy now, pay later. But also, again, due to the pandemic, we were all stuck at home and we're making a lot of our purchases online, which is where these older generations finally came online and started shopping and discovered buy now, pay later because it is so prolific. Our offerings are available at, I think, something like 650,000 merchants worldwide. So, there's a lot of that exposure, and merchants show it to their customers, what we say upstream. But before the shopping cart, I think Samina mentioned that people are inspired and make that purchase decision when they discover an item. And so often merchants will let customers know this is an option up front, which is where we've been able to educate and win some of the older demographics. Again, I'm happy to share some of that research with anyone. So find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share that with you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
And so this concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much, Samina and Heather, for joining me. It's been a really interesting discussion. And if anyone does have any follow-up questions about the webinar, feel free to email us at ask@voguebusiness.com. And if you'd like to know more about PayPal solutions, please visit paypal.com/PayPal credit, or reach out to Heather on LinkedIn, as she's mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as I mentioned at the beginning, a recording will be made available shortly after the webinar on the Vogue Business website. Thank you so much for joining us, and I wish you a pleasant rest of your day.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.